Greetings and welcome to the fourth episode of the Black Foundation Podcast. This podcast is a part of our Rising Star initiative, which seeks to build and unite mind, body, and spirit. In this episode, we are exploring the idea of spirit as energy. This is an idea that we find present in a number of human cultures, such as the idea of Qi in China, Shakti in India, or Ngolo among the Bakongo people of Congo. As such, it is not coincidental that we are examining this via a specific Afro-Asian fusion. On this edition, we are exploring the fascinating art of urban Qi with its creator, Lacouir Yancey, who is a capoeirista, a musician, a massage therapist, and I'm sure many other things. In today's episode, we'll explore the nature of this art, its meaning, how he came up with it, and also the importance of movement overall. So welcome, Brother Lacouir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brother Kamal. Thanks for having me.
For sure. I'm glad
Thanks
you
for
were able to
having me.
join us. So I have a few questions for you, and we should start perhaps with the most obvious one. What is urban Qi?
Okay, so Urban Chi is a system that I came up with that combines the idea of Chi, life force energy, and urban, meaning, Black, meaning of the city or of that environment. And I kind of put the two together and called it Urban Chi. Now, Urban Chi is taking a look at movement through the lens of breaking, popping, locking, animating, that sort of thing. So it's like I mashed the two together because the spirit of it was a feeling that I felt when I would pop, specifically popping, and all the elements of popping. Urban Chi falls in the line of more waving. So the elements of waving. So that's where it is. It's within a system that evolved into what I now call freedom movement therapy. And Urban Chi falls under the lines of the water element. So I broke it down into like the 5 elements TCM theory. And I added the air and ether, like from the Ayurvedic system. So earthly movement. So we also have videos of the foundations of some of those movements as well. So that's Urban Chi kind of came, it started, there, and then it just kept building. So because I was like, well, if we take all of breaking and all of popping and all of this history of like our hip hop elements, the movement aspects, we really have a real complete system of movement. So Dr. Poe got fascinated with the Urban Chi idea, because at the time we were both studying urban, traditional Chinese medicine pretty hard. He was studying Ayurvedic medicine, super, very intensely, traveling back and forth to India, bringing me books and trying to get me to understand the history. And he's like, Ayurvedic medicine came first, and then you have this. So that's kind of the idea where Urban Chi kind of brewed and started.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because the looking at dance and seeing the type of energy in the dance movements and how they're related to this sort of free-flowing motion is fascinating to me. And I know you talked about like the process and some of the constituent elements, but was it the dance itself? Was it the practice of Qigong? Was it your clinical practice? What was it that inspired you to create this?
That's a great question. So yes. So when it's all of those. So originally, I started breaking hip hop. Well, actually, I started in Kung Fu when I was very young, learning Southern style praying mantis when I was in Louisiana, very young. I was 8, 9 years old, right? So just an impressionable age, something that a young kid could get energy out, for me. But my mother was wanting us to do it. So we had moved to Louisiana when we were kids, coming from the north, getting beat up all the time, running home from school. So she had my uncle at the time. He's like, oh, I know a guy. He teaches Kung Fu. And so we're like, Kung Fu, what? really? Like Bruce Lee? So we're thinking we're going to go to this dojo and it's going to be all, either Chinese or, more Asian folks. And we get there and everybody's black. And the master comes out, and Nate, what's his name? And he comes out, hey, how y'all doing? Da, da, da. And we're like, oh, okay. So the brother happened to be a military cat, learned when he was stationed in he was stationed in Japan actually at the time. So how his lineage, also young, I don't know exactly how his lineage got him into the Southern style, and we're calling it that. We wore white shirts, black pants with a white stripe. I do have a picture. I got to get to Brother Ed so we can post that. So started on Kung Fu at the time. Michael Jackson and all them was blowing up. So Michael's, dancing machine, doing the robot, right? And gliding across the stage. And he was just in his newer stage. So we're like, wow. And then Off the Wall hit. And we're like, oh, wow. Michael's locking. He's doing all this, And so we were like, this is dope. And then when we came back to the stage, breaking had blown up, right? Everybody was popping and breaking. And, this is early 80s. And so we're like, dang. So it's natural for us. So we had this foundation of Kung Fu and kick flips and, all kinds of stuff it offered us. So then we naturally got into hip hop. And then once I got into breaking, I was more of a B-boy. I like to hit the floor. My nephew was a B-boy, so he taught me foundations, all the power moves, crab walking, backspins, windmills, head spins, 90s and all that. And then I said, so then I was just in that and got into gymnastics, got into, after gymnastics is when I got into capoeira. And then once I got to about 25, I was like, okay, I need to figure something out. How do I develop a career in a sense for myself? And my wife at the time was like, well, maybe you should, go to PT school. You're so physically, you have a kinesthetic intelligence. So why don't you, and so we looked in that. And then it was just the time and the money at the time. We're like, man, I can't really afford this right now. And so we found a massage school. Went to massage school. And in massage school, training under Dr. Shiping Zhou, we had to learn Tai Chi and Qigong. And he was teaching most of the classes, all the Eastern classes. And so I was fascinated by it, so here's this cat doing like this form of Kung Fu, the soft style, which is, Tai Chi and Qigong, doing the breath work, which Qigong means. And so we got into it. And then at the time I was still teaching breaking. I was still doing all my classes. I had a regular class going and I was getting back into popping prior to before going to school. I was like, I really dig popping. It's got something to it. It helps me warm my body up, helps my body get more lucid before I start breaking. So I started teaching that within my classes. I would make B-boys pop because a lot of B-boys want to come in and just head spin and do all the power moves. I was like, no, we need to figure out how to work with the, warming your body up, get the chi moving in your body. And then something clicked in my head and I was like, oh, get the chi moving in your body through popping. I was like, yeah, we're doing the same thing. So then I started talking to my teacher, like, have you guys seen much of this in China? You know what I mean? When you were young, growing up, just asking him stuff. And he's like, oh, that's snake striking. He's like, oh, that's snake Kung Fu. And I was like, tell me more. And he was like, oh, yeah. So what you doing there? You bring your energy up. He hadn't studied it. But when he would do Tai Chi, he would move very much like that. He's animating his body. And I'm like, man, Doc, you look like you popping. And he would just giggle because he didn't know what I was talking about until at the end of the year, after we graduated, he said, Lacouir, do some of your dancing, your chi dancing. And I said, so then right before I was going on, it's like, what do you want me to tell people that you're doing? And I was like, this is urban chi. And I was like, yeah, this is urban chi right here. And then he was like, oh, that's good. That's good. I love it. And then that just stuck. So I do got to give some credit to Dr. Joe for some of that too. for inspiring me, and here's me doing a breakdance demonstration, ideally at a massage graduation, right? And this was an Eastern school. So East West Healing Arts is an predominantly Eastern and Western school, but I went there for the Eastern part. One of the largest, most hours of study, 800 some hours for a massage school. Yeah, so we have a high number, and I think it's at 850 now. And so he would always have you do demonstrations. So I come back, and then I became a teacher there and everything. So I started teaching. He wanted me to teach the Tai Chi and Qigong, how he taught me. And then I went on and learned more and studied under the Tai Chi fundamentals with the Tai Chi school here, and under Trisha Yu's system. And so I started learning that. So I just kind of kept practicing. I just really started falling in love with that, the Qigong, and just how it felt. But always what would happen is I would end up popping at the end, because it would inspire me to want to start, figuring out, oh man, this movement feels, what if I really expressed it all the way through my spine? And then I just started building on it. Like, what if I use the system in a way that was like, here's the foundation, but the ultimate goal is freestyling, like hip hop, right? The origins of hip hop, if you don't have freestyle in the origin of hip hop, like whether it's rapping, DJing, breaking, anything like that, it all has a freestyle element in the cipher. So my thought was like, why would I get myself stuck in a form? And, a Tai Chi form, it's like, why would I get stuck in that, as opposed to like, if people need to free their bodies. And so I was like, here's a foundation. And then once you get in your body, you do what it needs for the day. So that was kind of how it came about. Is like, I was in school, I learned, some of the Qigong, and I saw the foundational similarities as, breaking, animating, waving. And then so I carried that over, and I said, well, let me get into a little bit more to Tai Chi Qigong and study it a little bit more. And still, it's a ever-going process. And then I just started to mash them together. And then Dr. Poe, he was like, now this is something. And I was like, all right. And he's like, well, show me more of what it is. So we did the whole foundations. You can, learn it on the Black Foundation website. And real basic. So it's real simple. We had a couple of naysayers, saying some things on there. And we both said, oh, that's kind of good, because we got some conversation about it, and then some people were like, hey, this is really cool. So that's kind of how, it came together. So it was partly learning some of the Eastern medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, learning the Tai Chi and Qigong. And then from that lens of popping and animating is how basically I teach most things now, because there's uniqueness within that freedom movement, that freestyle element. So,
that's really, really interesting, because there are a number of layers in there in terms of the encounter with the Kung Fu instructor, the milieu of relatively early hip hop and breakdancing. Its ascendance is a key element of a very visible and salient element of hip hop, and then your own explorations of the body, both your own body, but also the study of the body.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. That's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, experiential.
Yes, very much. Yeah, it was very much a journey or these were each developments that emerged from this exploratory journey. That's just really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And also like how, how you discussed the idea of it being an evolving path, that you continue to work and build this. One of the things that strikes me listening to you talk about it is, urban chi seems to reflect a really interesting Afro-Asian cultural fusion. And I would imagine a lot of that has to do with the social historical context in which we exist, because I think we're around the same age. And I don't know, for me, that a lot of those, let's see, Asian elements have been very salient in terms of my own development, but so is hip hop. Hip hop has been, uh, especially in the 80s and 90s, for me, especially the 90s, a very salient feature. So I'm curious, given like the sort of Afro-Asian future that seems to be evident in Urban Chi, what's the significance of that to you?
So the significance is that, like what I was mentioning before, when we think of, most martial arts, when you ask somebody about martial arts, their mind right away goes to, Chinese martial arts, Kung Fu, Bruce Lee, uh, but us growing up, we looked at it like, well, it's also our first introduction to Jim Kelly, right? And then seeing Jim Kelly and going, wow, there's a brother in here doing this stuff, and he's cold. He's, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the Game of Death. And so it was significant because in my experience, it was no different. It was like when we started breaking, like battling, right? When you Brooklyn battle or Brooklyn rocking, that's a martial foundation in movement that sort of, carried over through some lineage, but it keeps this vein of like this opposing, duck, sweep, boom, boom, so the significance is that also as a community, in the Black community, I feel like we've lost our systems of healing. So what the significance for me was like, really, I always pictured, I was like, and I did do a lot of it, but I always pictured teaching at a, community center, going back to where, like the school that I grew up in going to and wanting to reach some of the younger kids. So the Afro-Asian combination is just significant because there's more relations to African roots and Afro-Asian, which we just are not aware of, that we're kind of like sitting there right next to each other, let alone we're, on the West Coast, you had a lot of Chinese slaves at one point working on the railroads and things like that. And you had Blacks. So it was like, there was a good, mix. So for me, it's really about the foundation of healing. That's why it's so significant. But the Chinese seem to gather a system and still be able to hold on to some of that, as obviously ours was broken apart. And so we have fragments of natural healing. So, yeah, so the significance of, crossing over the Afro and Asian aspects, I truly feel like there's something in me that has like a core understanding of some of the Chinese arts. I'm not sure what it is instinctually, but like even when I was in school learning, it came to me naturally. It would seem like it was already in there. Maybe it was my experience with Kung Fu at really young, but it seemed to make sense. And then going into breaking, and more the urban world, and it just always seemed to, kind of keep crossing back through my life. And now even more significantly, performing in an Afro-Asian fusion dance troupe with, Dr. Choi, and dance with her dance company. And her whole thing is Afro-Asian, I bring more of the Afro for her, but so yeah, that's all I would say. Is just quite significant for me in that way.
It's really interesting. One of the things I've had, kind of much like yourself, when you describe the breakdancing battling as being a martial experience, it's really interesting. It takes me back to a lot of my experiences in hip hop in the 90s, which I mean, that was the period where I both began to immerse myself in the martial arts, but also really almost at the same time immersing myself into hip hop as a practitioner, not just as a consumer.
Mm,
And you're right. I mean, like when we would have ciphers and would have these freestyle battles, it was the verbal analog to what we would do in martial arts class. So there was still this martial spirit, this warrior ethos that
hmm
was implicit in all these things. They were, for me at the time, that is hip hop and the martial arts. One was the physical expression of this martial idea, and the other was the verbal expression of it, or the the oral expression of it. So you have the oral manifestation of a martial spirit and the
hmm
physical manifestation of a martial
Yes,
spirit. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's because most don't know, but I was an MC and I, still got that MC spirit in me too. But I just translate that and playing the bass. I just kind of like sit back and play the bass. But I still write, here and there. And but the freestyling, we get let's like I used to surprise you because I'd be breaking, and then next I'd be standing in line waiting to get in the cipher, right? And they'd be like, yo, what? B-Boy Spirit is about to get up in here. Um, so I like it for the mental gymnastics, if you will. Flowing and freestyling is it's extremely therapeutic for our memory, for focus. And with another organization that I was with, Elements of Change, I used to do little talks before battles about what we were calling the hip hop healing arts, and like each element having this element of healing, because it has healing within it, and it's healed all of us personally, especially Black folks. It's like for some of us, we wouldn't even have. I mean, I don't know what I would have done without hip hop. Tell you honestly, like where would I really have been? What would I've gotten into, because it did keep me out of trouble. It taught me levels of discipline. It taught me levels of focus. It taught me really, now the more that I know, it taught me more about mindfulness and meditation and all these things, because people all the times will do is try to put it in this category of like, oh, they're just dancing around. Oh, they're just, jive talking or whatever. And then assuming that just because it seemed like it came natural to us, that we didn't practice for hours. That whole what's the book? The code. It's about practice code or whatever. It's like, but I read the book and it's about talking about practice and about talent and practice is what it gets down to. And we practice for hours. I mean, I would spend hours in my garage breaking, hours. Our class is like similar to capoeira. Your class 3 hours, right? So when you get channeled into the spirit of what you're doing, that's like a meditative space. That's a bliss. That's flow state, right? And so yeah, it has that, in the spirit of the battle, right? Why in hip hop do we have everything is a battle? That's not an old thing. That's not a new thing. Tap dance, right? They used to challenge each other in tap dance. Buck dancing, even before, like some of the real old origins of capoeira or breaking, was buck dancing, right? I'm talking jumping in the air as high as you can and landing on your hands, like very similar to capoeira stuff, but it was like dancing and clap rhythm, whatever rhythms were, they were creating at that time. And it really was like a slave origin type of dance. It's like, we need to get buck here to get this energy out, so we don't go up in here and strangle this master, the master. So yeah, that battling aspect starts there, and then they turn into more ciphers later, right? Because there'd be cats that battle, but it started out cipher, and then it turned a little bit more battle. And then where it's just like cats are like coming at each other, as opposed to talking about what's going on in the community and how can we evolve as a people. That positive, like the message, right? Grandmaster Flash, how can he's dropping the message? Hip hop was always a positive thing, and then it started to go into like be isolated into I'm the best rapper. who's the best, as opposed to like, let's all just evolve together and let's spar, let's, you know what I mean, make each other sharper, iron sharpen iron. So yeah, the spirit of freestyle, that's what I feel like is super important. So that's why with Urban Chi, I kept it. I keep that aspect. I'm trying to get people to, in a sense, stay true to what the essence of hip hop is, and also what the essence of the human spirit, because we need to be creating, right? As humans, that's one of the greatest things we have, is that we have the ability to create in this moment. So
you raised an interesting point a little while ago that I want to go back to, and this is this idea of movement as healing. And my question for you is, why is movement a particularly powerful approach to wellness, what to healing?
Mm-hmm. So just like, so Urban Chi, really what is like, Chi is the governor of blood, right? And like your blood flows in your body, but Chi, which is energy, which is how your mind says, if your mind can imagine, I'm going to move like water. If your mind can imagine that. So Chi is encouraging that flow. So I say this too, because movement is super important. The other side is I'm a body worker and a personal trainer. And like literally, like we move because we can, first of all. If you can move a certain way, do it. Because we know as we get older, our joints become more stiff and more brittle, and we begin to lose the synovial fluids. So movement is so significant because it's what starts to generate your body's process of keeping that flow. So like in traditional Chinese medicine, the idea of the elements and the meridian system is how energy flows through the body. There's systems. Same thing with India and Ayurvedic medicine. And I'm sure in some roots of, I've been really trying to find some of it, but lines of energy that flow. Even in Thai massage, they have sand lines. In Ayurvedic, they have they call them nadis and marma points, and the energy lines flow through the body. Chinese medicine, they flow through the organ system, and that's just the one I know just the best through studying in school. But so you're trying to get energy to move through these energy channels, right? And up your center channel. If you don't move, your body becomes stagnant, and stagnant energy, like water sitting in a lake, right? What, like the lakes in Wisconsin, we get like, oh, you don't necessarily want to swim in them after a certain, part of the year when it gets real hot. It's around July, June, July, because all of the algae and everything is rising to the top, and it just gets kind of murky. That's like that in our bodies. If we don't move, our blood, our chi, our organ systems get still and stagnant. So movement is super significant, because not only does it start to move blood flow in your head, because they say so is the body, so is the mind, or the mind is the body is the mind, and that idea. So if you get your body to move, you can get your thoughts to start to evolve and move, right? So sometimes we get stuck in our mind. If you're stuck in your mind, then what do? You got to move, right? Something as simple as, like, you're a writer, you start writing, and you just I can't, I'm stuck. I got to stop. One of the best things you do is just go for a simple walk, right? Go out and walk. It starts to get blood flow to your brain. It starts your brain thinking again. It may create some energy. If you walk in the woods, it creates another type of thing. Now you got terrain and you got all different things. Or for that matter, it's being capoeiristas, you jump up and you do Jenga. So you move, you integrate movement into trying to get that movement in the brain, getting unstuck. So it's a real holistic thing. It's we move the body so the mind moves. We move the mind so the body moves. So it's a holistic system. So that's the most significant thing for healing. And then the other side of it is movement feels good. It should. And if it doesn't, try to make it. That's sort of my thing.
I like the way you said that. I remember setting a goal for myself of being able to teach capoeira to anybody, to anybody, whether they were 8 or 80. Now
Yes.
I haven't taught any 80 year olds. I've taught some 60+ year olds,
Mm,
and I've taught some very small children, and yeah, it's not that I don't, what I typically get out of the 60 year old is not what I may get out of the 6 year old, right, in
mm,
terms of movement. Uh, but they do move. I do get movement, dynamic, continuous movement out of them. And so this idea of movement as a way of recalibrating, right? This
mm,
idea of movement and the circulation of energy, that's something that's one of those things, I think, going back to the previous question, that perhaps that's something that we see a shared principle, in these various, African as well as Asian cultural contexts.
mhm.
Um, so I just have one more question for you, and you really just, I'm curious how what you've gained from the experience of sharing this are. So what have been some of your experiences teaching urban chi?
Mm. Oh man, you just spoke of working with the 8-year-old to the 80-year-old. I literally have that still. And so my experience with it, first of all, so the system of freedom movement and all the 6 elements that I use, basically the 5, elements of Chinese medicine, and I add the air and ether as one. Um, and sort of the like the Wu Xing. I created that system because I wanted to have an entry point for all people, wherever a person is, right? So if I get somebody, I always said to myself, okay, if I get somebody that comes in here at 70 years old, how am I going to approach, you know, teaching them this idea of finding freedom in their body, or learning how to move chi in their body? And so my experience has been just that. I have, you know, right now I just got another 70-year-old, fair-skinned gentleman that you would not consider, doing these things. And so my experience was this: I was afraid to talk about, breaking with people, first of all, because as soon as they hear that and they don't understand the context, I'm not going to break my body. And I started talking about pop and animating, and then they kind of clown it, oh yeah, you mean like this stuff? And so my experience was like, okay, how do I get people to understand that this is truly a legit movement system that we've done for years, for hundreds of years, moving in this way. And my thought was like, why is it okay for a person to watch, like my teacher, Dr. Joe, doing Tai Chi, and they go, oh, it's so beautiful. But then when they watch me, everybody wants to stand up and like, oh, he's dancing. Oh my God. Right. It was like, yes, he had a performative aspect to it, but then when I'm doing it, it seemed to be like, this is a performance. And I'm like, no, I'm actually really going internal. It may look fascinating to you, but I'm trying to feel what's going on just the same. So my experience was like, how do I, in teaching it, the young kids, they glue onto it like, like crazy, right? And I teach it a little bit different. So if I'm someone young and I'm teaching them urban chi, I'm going to get them to mimic me, right? And do different things and, make it playful. As the individuals got older, my experience is that they need a little bit more of the system. So some of them that walk in, I don't even tell them what they're doing. I said, we're going to do a little, we're going to get a little bit more of the chi and synovial fluids moving in your body. And they're like, oh, okay. Now, if I would have said, we're going to do a little popping and animating, a little bit of waving, they're going, what? But what I found, the people that had absolute no connection to like hip hop dance, to, pop and any of that, they know who Michael Jackson is, like fascinated by how he danced. But all the other Pop and Taco and the people he learned from, nobody knows about those guys, right? I mean, as far as like in the, some of the older generations, they don't really know, they're just like, this is great, performs, and I don't know how he does that stuff. So I just started teaching and like going, okay, we're going to move this energy up your body. You'll see in the videos, or moving earth to heaven. And then this is about freeing up your spine, learning how to move, energy from the earth and up. And so I would just start teaching them. And then they go, after some of them had been like training them for 6 months or so. And then I like all of a sudden say, well, let's try something new today. And then they end up falling in love with that. And that's what they want to do. That's the main thing. So I had to get it in my head that this was something value as well, because growing up, young Black man, the things that we performed, we felt like we were always performing, thinking that it didn't have a valid, wasn't valid in the system of healing, in the system of movement, in the system of martial even. And so so my experience was that I was shy to teach it, because I didn't want people to take it on as like, oh, that looks cool. I was more so saying, this is just another way of learning how to move chi through your body. And it might be fun for some of you. If it's not, we move on. And that's why I just left it. So my experience was that some cases was quite profound. You see people go through similar emotional experiences, the same as like when a person's doing yoga and they get, you get in a certain bind or, position, and something starts to happen in your body. You either get frustrated because you can't maybe balance in tree pose or something, or you might get angry, certain emotions come up. And so I started noticing those emotions coming up in people. They get really frustrated with some of it, or they just have this exuberant, joyful laugh, right? So they'd be in the fire element. They have this joyful laughing thing. And we know that was always like when you're laughing and moving, which happens in capoeira a lot too. You just kind of, it's joyous. Something happens to your heart. You feel like you can breathe better. You feel like you can move, you can dial in. So I started noticing the emotions and watching the person. So then what makes urban chi and also freedom movement like different from other things, I'm not overly worried about this person has to get their 45 minutes of this movement and exercise in. I'm not over worried about that. What I'm wondering is like in that moment when a person gets stuck, or if they have a lot of joy in doing it, or if they have pensiveness, which lines up with different elements in the emotion, then I want to tap in. Then we may have a little short conversation about that. Like, what is it? Where's your body stuck? And that's the process of freedom movement, therapy. It's like, this is what's going to allow you to actually evolve as a mover. And so that was my experience. And at all ages, you see kids go through it, and in each thing. And so my experience in that has been profound. And when I'm teaching, I kind of only want to do that just to kind of be selfishly explore it in people also, and like learn, their experiments as well, in a sense, because you're always trying stuff and then seeing how it works, So the experience has been actually quite joyful.
I appreciate that. That's cool. You remind me of my experiences, teaching capoeira, where it's, they range on a continuum, but in my experience, you can learn a great deal about yourself in the doing.
Yeah. So I mean, I truly do learn as much. Like as I'm teaching, I'll be doing something like, wow, I'm really stuck on one side, right? And that's the other thing. What made me change a little bit, just to say this real brief, what made me want to apply like Qigong and actually in capoeira, because capoeira has that, idea of the balanced opposites, right? And how we connect to our environment. So capoeira has that as well. You do an awu this way, you do an awu that way. A manjinga this way, you go manjinga that way, or you might manjinga back. So it's not about like, so one thing with break-in is we can get really one-sided and do things on your good side a lot. And my thing was like, it was something I wanted to do with myself, was train myself how to be balanced on both sides, which also I got that from the Chinese medicine of like balance opposites, and then started learning that this balance opposites thing is in everything, and it's deep in our roots, in our African roots, and the dualities. It's like some of the obvious things. You look, you got the sun, you got the moon, you got the yin, you got the yang, the hot and the cold. And so the idea was symmetry. Try to create symmetry in your body. And if something feels really awkward on one side, that's where you should be working, because that's what's going to create more neural pathways. What's the term now? The neuroplasticity. You're actually opening up new neuroplasticity. Your brain has ability to still absorb and mold. And you're opening up new neural pathways. So that's really when I'm teaching older folks. It's like they're not trying to go on the dance floor. They may be at a wedding, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Wow, how can you do that?" "Oh, this is this therapy that I do, on a regular basis with this guy." And lo and behold, it's like it can turn into that, right? The yang side would be performing, the yin side would be healing from it. And so I just try to work on that spectrum and just keep building. So yeah, that's what Urban Chi, has that, and it's evolved. We have to do another video. So be on the lookout. I'm doing another one. I have some of them on Instagram.
Okay.
Where I'm doing some of the sitting meditation, Urban Chi movements, and everybody responds and says, "Are you doing some form of Kundalini?" And I said, "Well, sure, but technically, I'm just trying to move energy from my, the origins of life up into that higher consciousness, that crown chakra, and on out through the hands and everything." So yeah.
It sounds like a fascinating system, Brother Lacouir, and I appreciate what you're doing and you're taking the time to share with us today and our listeners. Where can people learn more about Urban Chi and your work?
So where you can catch some of the videos, what you're going to see it under now is going to be freedom movement therapy, and you'll see some of the Urban Chi videos as well. You can check out on the Black Foundation website, blackfoundation.org, which you're on the site now. People are watching it. So you can go in there, look up Urban Chi in the categories. I think it's in the menu, and you can find it there in that link. And there's videos. I think we have 4 videos: Earth to Heaven, Heaven to Earth. We have Sunset to Sundown. That's the animating popping away from one side to the other. And then we have Earth Movement, which is, we get into a little bit of gliding. So which changes things a little bit from the Qigong. So you can find on the Black Foundation website. You can follow me on Instagram, which you're going to catch some music stuff too there, but also you'll catch movement. But Lacouir Yancey, check the spelling on here. You can, put it in the caption, but Lacouir at Instagram at Lacouir Yancey. And then you have YouTube, my YouTube channel, / Lacouir Yancey. You'll find that there. And those are right now the main places. And if anybody, the idea is, if you want to ask questions and that sort of thing, please do, because it encourages me. Again, this is a system that's always evolving, because I don't want it to get stuck. As you put a label on something so strong, then it kind of confines it. So I wanted to kind of keep that expansive energy. So it's always developing, and I love hearing people's feedback and experience with it. So yeah, it's a place you can find it.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing, and thanks for doing the work that you're doing and being creative. Tapping into your own creativity and initiative in terms of really finding dynamic ways for people to gain self-mastery, to gain healing, and so on. I think that's very valuable work.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
For sure. All right, Brother Lacouir, you have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Foundation Podcast. On our website, you can learn more about Lacouir Yancey's work. We specifically recommend the video Welcome to Why Massage. There are also a number of other videos featuring Urban Chi. We will continue our exploration of spirit from other perspectives, drawing from various ways of conceiving of spirit as it manifests itself among Black peoples.
Hey everybody, Lacouir here, owner of Y Massage Bodywork and Natural Fitness and creator of the Poly Movement program. Here at Y Massage, our mission is to develop individualized personal training and bodywork programs that provide sustainable results. Okay, we break it down into three components: the mind, the body, and the spirit. Here at Y Massage, what we like to do is do everything mindfully. So whether we're exercising, lifting heavy weights, or doing anything of that nature, we're going to do it mindfully. And we're going to do it in a way that helps us focus in that workout. And that focus allows you to translate that into your day-to-day life. Okay, so now looking at the body, we believe that how you carry yourself throughout your day and how your posture is a direct relation to how you see yourself in life. And lastly, we look at the spirit. Spirit is a representation of your overall sense of well-being. We like to use massage and body work and meditation to help downregulate your system and help you to be more productive